if you're a lactation professional, a parent, or if you just consider yourself an advocate. Um, and we're trying to kind of learn more about our audience as we go. So we just love to hear from you in the chat and just kind of hear from where you're coming from. All right. So I want to say hey and welcome to everyone who is attending today. We hope this message will be well received. I don't think my slides are going forward. Oh, there we go. Okay. This is the Powerhouse Advocate Training for everyone who's just coming in. Share your information in the chat so you can learn about the other people in the room. And I want you to share one word or a phrase that kind of describes how you're feeling right now about this huge task to normalize breastfeeding. So I'm going to leave that up for a moment and give you guys an opportunity to get active in the chat. This event is just really about transparency, and it's about really trying to encourage advocates to really push for more self-care so that they can show up as their best authentic self when they are working with their clients. So not everyone who's an advocate is also a lactation professional. So this just gives you an opportunity to be able to just connect with them, but also see how you're a little bit different. And I'll just talk a little bit about, while you guys are active in the chat, I'll talk a little bit about the normalized breastfeeding movement and this hashtag that has basically carved a path for its own, right? If any of you know, I am very, very transparent about the fact that I did not create the hashtag, but I decided to step into a role of leadership when I saw that there wasn't one. There was no one leading the charge. And so I jumped on and said, okay, let's normalize breastfeeding and got things going from there. But this has really been something that has completely carved a path of its own. And the people who are pushing the movement forward are really just these amazing, on fire advocates that just love birth and breastfeeding and the transition from womanhood to motherhood and all of the amazing things that come along with it. So in a society that doesn't really value the effort and the discipline that's required to exclusively feed a baby or even attempt to exclusively pump or acquire donor milk for oversupply, this type of support for the advocates is so necessary because you're oftentimes going to see that you're feeling burnt out and you're feeling like things are just not going well, right? So one word in the chat about how you're feeling about this huge task to normalize breastfeeding. Now, just so that you know what to expect, it's not a webinar. This is more of a training and a more of an awareness building type of experience. And we just really want you to learn how to shift your focus so you can gain clarity and start moving forward with authenticity. So this presentation is going to be, number one, off trend. There's definitely going to be some truth bombs involved. I will be sharing some personal stories. I will share with you a bonus framework. And also, I just want you to know that our goal, our vision with this presentation is that we want to see you reach your full potential. So as you're listening to the stories and as you're kind of hearing some of the information, I want you to think about yourself. I want you to think about how that relates to you and your story and how this information can help you to move forward. Yeah, I see some of this in the chat. Challenging, right? Daunting. It's one of those things where we're struggling to normalize breastfeeding, and the problem is that we really just don't know why, right? And so we're going to jump into it, but I'm going to challenge some of the commonly held beliefs about advocacy. I'm going to challenge you to focus on you during this time. So I want you to try and quiet yourself externally, but also internally. because a lot of times we have a lot of noise that's going on that's kind of keeping us from being able to fully experience what is happening in the present moment. I'm going to get a little silly. That's what I do when I present. So just go with it, have fun. And I'm going to make a huge announcement at the end. So be sure to save the end for that. And I'm going to make you an offer to continue working with me if this is something that you enjoy. Because I think that if we can start at the root, if we can find out what are the root causes of some of the things that we're dealing with in our industry, then we can really, really start to drive change, and not just change, but lasting impact in this community. Okay. So if all of that's good with you, just type yes in the chat. Let me know that you're good to go. You know, you might be like me. We're constantly trying to eliminate distractions in our lives, right? We're either, just parents, or we're parents and advocates. We're excited about this cause, or maybe we've gotten to the extent that we wanted to become a professional, and so now we have a lactation profession, and we're serving in that way. Well, this might be your current day-to-day life. You're juggling a lot of different things, a lot of different roles. You're wearing a lot of different hats, and you might be feeling like this. You might be feeling overwhelmed. You might be feeling anxious, maybe even undervalued at home or unfulfilled at work. You might be worrying about some of the things that are keeping you back, or even holding back your clients from being able to reach their desired goals. And so I want you to know that that's normal and that's okay. And I also want you to know that I'm going to help you to see how you can shift from here to where you want to be. Because I'm sure that you have an amazing gift or talent that you just haven't had the idea or time to make it happen, right? You haven't had the time to really delve in and say, okay, what am I good at? What can I do, right? You're stuck in that grind, the day-to-day of being with family, being at work, coming home and trying to, rejuvenate before you have to go back tomorrow and do it all again, right? And so what we want to do is really we want to talk about the fact that advocates and parents are always taught, and professionals have always been taught, to prioritize others, right? Give me a yes in the chat if you're, or even a guilty in the chat if this is you. Learn to prioritize others, you learn to prioritize work, you learn to prioritize tasks that keep you busy, and we also prioritize media that brings us down. And as someone who is a creative, someone who's a photographer and works in media, this is so crucial, because the vision and the visuals that you allow to sink into your mind are actually going to be the very thing that steers your path. It's crazy, right? And so I want to kind of open you guys up to the fact that there is something happening inside of you. And the question is, are you paying attention to it, right? Because being a powerhouse advocate is not just a title, it's a lifestyle. Type lifestyle in the chat if you can agree, because I know for me, I know that when I became a breastfeeding advocate, my entire life changed. Before then, I was just a wife and a mom, and I was going to school to become a photographer. And since then, since I was a breastfeeding mom, my babies are all grown up now, and they're homeschooling, and they're 15, 13, and 9. And so life is completely different for me right now. And as I try to stay connected with the breastfeeding world, even though I'm not breastfeeding, I start to look at things from a different lens. And so I went from being a photographer to then producing this normalized breastfeeding tour that would take normalized breastfeeding to a whole nother level, right? We were trying to challenge diversity. We were trying to really make sure that the visuals we were seeing in the media in regards to breastfeeding were on point, and that they were well represented in every culture, right? And so it's really interesting because uh, if you look at some of the ways that I've transformed over these years, I've gone from being anxious and overwhelmed and feeling undervalued and feeling unfulfilled to now having a really excited, overflowing energy, feeling more courageous, feeling powerful, and just feeling more relaxed about the whole thing. So if you're someone who wants to know how to go from overwhelmed to overflow, just give me a 1 in the chat so I can know that you're still here, you're still engaged, and I know that this is something that's resonating for you. Okay. Oop, I went backwards there. Sorry about that. Well, the 3 steps that are going to give you the power that you need to move forward are right here. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about your vision. That step is envision. Day 2 is decision, and day 3 is position. So if anybody showed up and was just like, I just need these 3 steps and then I'm going to leave, there you go. I didn't want anyone to have to feel like they had to stay till the end of the training to get this information. Those are the 3 steps. You can read about them in my book, or you can stay till the end of the training on day 3 and learn all about it. All right. So our first step is envision. And this is a powerful step, right? Because sometimes we don't consider what's going on in our mind when we are making plans, when we're making decisions, and we just are kind of on autopilot. And then when we finally realize, like, oh, we might want to consider these other things, it might be too late. So I created this 3-step system because I started to see that even in lactation, a lot of women were making decisions before really having a clear vision of what they wanted their nursing relationship to look like, right? And in order for them to be able to build that vision, they need someone's help, right? And so the book that I wrote, Latch the Gap, is actually a book to you. This book is for advocates who are, they desire to want, or they desire for parents to learn how to do better because they already know how to do better, right? So as the advocate, your role is not just to advocate for the parents, but in my book, I talk about how your role is actually to help parents learn to advocate for themselves. Once this happens, this cycle begins where they teach other parents how to advocate for themselves as well. And it's going to be a beautiful situation when we wake up one day and we don't have mothers struggling at the breast, and we don't have mothers feeling like they don't know what they want. They've come to breastfeeding with a clear vision. They know exactly why they want to do it. And we want to give them the tools to do that. But sometimes it's what's going on in here that is the reason why what you're communicating to them is not resonating down here. So I want to help you to see that connection. If you didn't already know, visuals are actually the most important type of media or information that your brain desires. Your brain desires vision. So it's interesting that we see people addicted to social media, right? Why? Well, because that's where all the visuals are, right? And you're seeing new visuals every day. And sometimes you're seeing visuals that are memes, and they take them and they make them funny. And it could be something that wasn't funny at all, but then you see it and you're like, oh my gosh, right? So then it keeps you coming back, right? And so these visuals are actually 90% of the information that's transmitted to the brain is visual, right? And our brains, they process visuals 60,000 times faster than they do text. So that means that when they read text, they look at it and they read it, but it doesn't mean that it's processed. Whereas when they see an image, oh my gosh, they connect and it resonates almost instantaneously. And that's why you'll see the difference in engagements on your social media posts, right? Where you post this really information deep type of post. You're like, this is going to be the one. It's going to give them so much power. And then you post it and it flops. No one's looking at it. It's just being scrolled by, right? And then you go and post some trendy let's say a breastfeeding photo or maybe even a reel or something like that on Instagram or on TikTok. And if you do that, people are engaging with it like crazy. And you're like, but that's not what they need. But visuals is what they want, right? So you have to learn how to use the visuals to your advantage so that you can communicate the information that's important. So I want to talk to you a little bit about my story, and I want to talk to you a little bit about how my vision impacted my journey. It's really interesting. Back in 2011, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I talk about it in the book, so I'm happy to share it now and be transparent. But I was on welfare. My husband and I were on welfare. My husband had a back surgery right before our son was born, and he couldn't work. And I actually had a carpal tunnel surgery the same year, and so I couldn't work. And so we were both on disability and receiving, cash aid and food stamps, and it was a really difficult time. I mean, I look back now and I'm like, I can't even believe that that was what it came to, but that was where we were. And I was going to put my daughter in daycare because they had a program where if you started going to school or you started working, that they would help you out with additional benefits. And so I decided to go to school. And I went to school for photography because my husband actually encouraged me. He said, you always have been taking great pictures, and your dad used to take pictures, and your brother is a photographer. Like, why don't you pursue photography? And I was like, it's not a bad idea. Like, that's something I can look at. And so when I started going to school, that's exactly what I chose. And it's interesting. I want to tell you about my class that I took in 2013. When I was, before that though, I received a vision. So once I started doing photography, I received a vision of myself being known as a photographer internationally. But when that happened, like, I didn't even know how to use a digital camera. Like, I was still in the process of learning. And so at that moment, I was like, why am I receiving this vision? But it was so clear. Like, I was known internationally for photography, and I didn't understand why. And so I never forgot it. But going forward to 2013, when I got into the commercial and advertising photography course, it was with this world-renowned photographer. He actually does a lot of the Harley Davidson advertisements that you'll see on TV. He trained us for the whole semester, and then at the end of the semester, he asked us to come to his desk and sit with him and talk with him and kind of share with him what our vision was of our future in commercial and advertising photography. Now, I could see myself doing like production because that was kind of cool for me, like setting things up and getting everything going. But I really had this vision within me that I wanted to see maternal health on billboards. And I don't know how to explain that to you, but when I thought about all that I could accomplish with commercial and advertising photography, most people get into that business because they want to make money. Most people get into that business because it's very, very lucrative. I was in the class learning about the business, but already had knowledge and understanding and wisdom about birth, lactation, and postpartum from my own experience. So because of that, for me, I saw a level of importance, right? Like, this was not just a job for me. This was a calling. This was something that I was like, I need to do this, right? You're not going to believe what happened next. I told my photography teacher, and he looked at me and laughed in my face. And at that moment, I had to really think very carefully about how I was going to move forward. Because see, I could have been the person who said, I'm gonna listen to what he said. I'm gonna take his advice, right? He's made all this money. He's worked with Harley Davidson. There's no reason I should be pursuing this path of maternal health in commercial and advertising photography. Well, little did I know that I would, 5 years later, launch the normalized breastfeeding movement. And a year after that, toured the United States for 2 straight years. And a year after that, collaborate with WIC and other large organizations like California Breastfeeding Coalition. And then I was hired by the Department of Public Health in Philadelphia to do their commercial campaign. So ironic that my vision would completely fit the exact need of the Philadelphia Department of Public Health in 2018, 2017 and 2018. They invited me back. That was the highest revenue I ever made as a photographer. Like 5 figures, high 5 figures. And I'm not afraid to say that. I'm confident to say that because I finally found my worth in this work. The problem was I was left feeling unfulfilled. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened to me when I showed up in Philadelphia. They took me all around the city. They showed me all of the billboards. I was ecstatic. It was amazing. And they took me to my hotel room. Something was wrong with the hotel. They were really upset about it. So they took me to another brand new hotel and set me up in one of their nicest suites. It was so amazing that I had to get on Facebook Live and share it with everyone who follows me because I couldn't believe what was happening. And I got to that point where I was like, oh my gosh, like, does this mean that I've made it? Like, what exactly does this mean? And so after all the excitement died down, I turned off the live and I sat down in my room and I gazed out of the window and I could see the city lights and the sun setting over the city sky. And I got this eerie feeling like something was missing. I went back over to my bag. I started looking through my bag, ruffling through everything, trying to make sure I had all of the equipment that I had planned to bring. I was looking crazily and couldn't figure out what it was. And all of a sudden, my phone began to ring. And when I went and grabbed my phone, it was my husband. And the week that they had asked me to come out to shoot for them was the week of Halloween. So our children were dressed up in their costumes, and I was missing it. I was missing it. See, in that moment, I realized that the one thing that really and truly mattered to me, I already had. And all of that effort and all of that vision and all of that I let it take me to the very end of myself. And I realized that that was not even what I wanted. And so when I talk about some of the ways that, you know, this movement has built me up, it's also broken me down. It's also brought me to the edge of myself where I've had to question my reality and find out if this is really the path that I want to be on. And so in late 2018, shortly after this trip, I took some time off. I actually started driving Lyft. I drove Lyft for like a year and a half, just in between my photo sessions. And something just wasn't connecting. Something just wasn't right. And I started homeschooling our children. But I was starting to have panic attacks every single night. I was starting to feel like I was losing my dream. Because once I switched to homeschool, everything stopped. Everything shifted. And I was forced to deal with my reality. And even though I was ecstatic about homeschooling, I was not ecstatic about losing my dream. But in that year, I developed so rapidly that my whole entire life changed, and I'm no longer recognizable to some of the people who knew me back then. In that time frame, so once we started homeschool, that was the end of 2019. It was going into the pandemic, and we homeschooled throughout all of that time. In that time frame, I went from being a 5-figure photographer to becoming a keynote speaker in only 2 years. And I don't know if you know the depth of that, but being a keynote speaker is not an easy feat. It requires a ton of practice and focus and dedication. The change that happened in me was not happening to me. It was happening for me. And so in this time, everything changed. And it wasn't because I decided that I didn't want to do photography anymore and I wanted to speak. No, it wasn't that. It was because I dedicated time and study to something that I was so passionate about that I wanted to know more about it. And it gave me energy for all of the other aspects of my life. So you might be wondering what I studied. Well, at the end of 2019, I was waking up with panic attacks every single night, to the extent that I could not get a hold of myself. And I thought I might need to get checked back into the hospital where I had postpartum depression and psychosis at. Okay, it was that bad. But one night, I just surrendered. I just surrendered. I let every negative emotion and every negative feeling just rush over my body. I just let it just flow. And as I surrendered, I received a new vision of myself speaking and teaching. And I was like, this was before I started becoming a speaker. I was trying to understand, like, speaking and teaching, like, what am I going to talk about? Like, I'm a photographer. I'm going to talk about the pictures, talk about their stories. Like, I was trying to figure this thing out. And what really ended up happening was I just felt led to start discovering and studying me, discovering and studying who I am and why I'm here. And every morning I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and sit out in my living room and stay there just to get some quiet and stillness before everyone else woke up in the household. And as I sat there, I just kept asking this question in meditation. I just kept asking, what is it? What is it? What is it? Almost like a really curious toddler. I just wanted to know what my purpose was. Why was I here? If I was created to be this breastfeeding photographer, why wasn't the photography the biggest part of what everyone was talking about? No, it was my words. Every time I was invited anywhere to speak, invited anywhere to showcase anything, people would always compliment or give me feedback about my words. And I started to see the pattern and I started to understand that, oh, maybe I'm just on the wrong path. Maybe this is not the path for me, even though it's the path that I chose, right? So I spent the whole year 2020, I read the entire Bible front to back. And for most people, that might not be your thing. That's okay. This is not about that, but I want you to know that that's what brought me to this point, was just focused study on who I am. I discovered myself within those words and within those pages. And the interesting thing is it showed me a lot about myself. It showed me the good and the bad. And I mean, there was a lot of bad, okay? But I came to a point of seeing that the way I was doing things was all wrong. See, the old way of doing things is, work at things, for a long time, stay busy, well, I'm going to do it next month. I'm going to put this off until next year. That was not what was coming from my focused study every morning. My focused study was showing me the value of the early bird catches the worm, right? While everyone else was sleeping, I was up studying. I was up figuring this thing out. And during that time, I actually completely transformed my life by just focusing on looking at myself, looking at the things that needed to change, and being overly committed and accountable to those things changing. And so the funny thing about it is this book was like a 15-year project. Like, I started this thing when my first baby was born. That was when I wrote the first draft. And I never touched it since. And I had a really traumatic experience with him postpartum. So I think that was connected to the book. And so I didn't want to I didn't want to revisit those feelings. And so I kind of put it to the side, not knowing that writing this book was the very thing that would heal me, right? Helping other women advocates, other professionals do this work of transformation was the very thing that would help me to transform myself. Right. And so this book came from starting to create courses and workshops and teaching and speaking, to then saying, well, gosh, I have to keep repeating to myself so many times, I might as well put it all in a book. So that's how the book came to be. But the interesting thing about it is I wrote the book in only 2 months. And when I wrote the book, it ended up being a 3-part series. It wasn't even one book. So see, when you look at your life and you look at your dreams and your goals, I want you to ask yourself if where you're at right now is where you want to be. If it is, great. This training is probably not for you. You can still get a lot of value out of it, but this training is specifically for those people who are like, I know that there has got to be more than this. Raise your hand in the chat or type a yes in the chat if that resonates for you, because really what's going on is we are not accessing who we really are because we're not in alignment with who we really are. And so in this book, I talk about how getting in alignment was really the thing that brought me to this place. And I learned by studying that this was actually my assignment. My assignment was to teach other people how to get in alignment. And I think as advocates, it's so easy to get caught up in like what's trendy, and I just want to get attention for a little bit so people will follow my page. So we do it, right? But then when we do that, we're losing a piece of ourselves because we're not staying authentic to who we are, right? So I don't know if you've ever seen this, but, and I say this now, even though it'll probably change in the future because social media changes all the time, but you'll never really see me posting trends. And it's just something about me personal. Now, if we have a social media manager at some point and they do the social media, they will post trends. But I personally don't follow trends. And the reason that I don't is because now I know that that's probably just not for me, right? It might be cool and it might get you attention, but that might not be the thing I need to focus on. Right. And so I've never been a person who follows trends. I've always been a person who sets trends. I set the trend of giving birth naturally and breastfeeding in my group of friends. I set the trend of making it an actual real thing of normalizing breastfeeding and not just a hashtag that we just throw out there on any occasional post. Right. And so if you look at this time frame here, you can see that I was dealing with a lot. I mean, even when I was on tour between 2015 and 2017, I was traveling with my baby, nursing my baby while we were taking these photographs, because in my mind, there was no other way, right? Who's going to have time to pump milk and send it back home? Like, no, I'm taking the baby, right? And my husband completely understood it. He actually was thrilled that I wanted to take the baby with me, but we were potty training too. So I was like, let's just take the baby. I'm going to make this a lot easier for everyone. So if you look at this time frame from 2011, I went from being curious about my work to then stressed out about my work because this teacher told me that I was never going to make it, right? And then anxious about my work when I started doing normalized breastfeeding and not knowing what was going to happen if I went on tour with my baby and our baby. And then worry. I was so worried at the end of 2018, when I realized that I was just not on the right path. That was just not it for me, right? But some of the things that I started to see in retrospect, some of the reflections that I gained from looking back at this time frame is that I went from ignorant to fearful to doubtful to overwhelmed, and then bam, out of nowhere, I had overflow. And I had confidence. Now, you might look back at who I was in 2014 and say, but you were always confident. No, my friend. No. I have built that confidence over time. I've always been a people pleaser. I've always been someone looking for someone to validate me and make me feel good about myself. So when I tell you that I was not confident back then, I am not lying. I have no reason to, okay? But overnight, literally from 2019 to 2020, I went from overwhelm to overflow. And then I just couldn't figure out how. I had to go back and look at everything that I did. Now, the number one most consistent thing was I was studying myself every single day. I was looking at myself. I was being my own critic, not to put myself down, but to really look at myself and say, because my children were getting older at this point. It's kind of like, am I a good example to these children? Like, am I someone who they'll want to be when they get older? Because otherwise they're going to be looking to everyone else to try and get that motivation to be who they want to be and strive to be who they want to be. And so in 2020, I opened myself up to joy. I opened myself up to try and find my purpose. And it really became this wild treasure hunt. That's the best way that I can describe it. Crazy things happened during that year that I can't even begin to describe, on top of the worldwide pandemic. But it was a time where I just learned to get still. And I learned how to rest as if my life depended on it. I learned how to open up my mind to everything that I had been blocking out for so long. And I don't know about you, I'm sure you've heard this saying, a picture it tells 1,000 words. That quote was written back in 1921. And when I was looking for this quote, this is the first time I've ever even seen the actual name of the person who wrote the quote. You have to understand that your vision is going to guide everything. Sometimes it's going to be conscious and sometimes it's going to be subconscious. And so that's something that you want to remember. But this, my friend, was the result. This vision on a billboard that I could physically go and touch, seeing this manifest in a way that was even better than I could have imagined. I have to share with you my favorite verse of all time. My favorite scripture is Ephesians 3:20, and it says, "To him who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly and above all that we can ever think for or imagine, to him be the glory." This is something I never could have planned. This was something I never could have dreamed. This was something that shocked the world. When people saw this billboard, it went crazy. And I'm not talking about viral. It didn't have to be viral. I'm talking about within our industry, because it showed other people that it's possible. That it's possible to live our dream, that it's possible to put ourselves out there and get back what we expected, right? And so the problem with my professor, well, rather, the problem here was my professor and not me, because he was unable to see what I could see. He was unable to envision what I could envision. And so that means that no one can tell you about your vision and your calling, right? You have something specific to you, to your talents, to your gifts, to your skill set that you can do to change the world. And I believe that. I don't think that just because, oh, this is normalized breastfeeding, okay, everyone else doesn't matter. No. When I started normalized breastfeeding, my number one thing that I would do to grow the social media was collaborating with others. That was the number one thing we did. We would collaborate on events. We would collaborate on posts. We would collaborate on group chats. We would do all kinds of different things. That was when I started the video podcast on YouTube with Google Hangouts. I was like, well, I can't go to Amsterdam to interview someone. Maybe I can get them on this link to join me, and maybe we can do it that way, right? So sometimes you got to be creative. You got to think outside of the box. You know, what would have happened if I would have just continued to be this girl who just took her professor's advice? What would have happened if I would have stayed on that path? You know, how would that have changed the trajectory of my life? And how much would it have cost me to not trust my vision? Because right now, when I look at things as far as time and freedom and finances, I'm doing much better where I was supposed to be all along, right? And what or who are you listening to that is holding you back from the vision that you've been given? I want you to take a moment and write it down. You can write it in the chat if you need to. If you don't have paper, that's totally fine. Just write in the chat, screenshot it, keep it for yourself, okay? I want to share this verse with you. It's Habakkuk 2. It says, and Yah answers, this is the Hebrew name of the Most High. So, and Yah answered me and said, write the vision and inscribe it on tablets so that he who reads it runs. Y'all, when I read this the first time, this verse made me sit there and think for such a long time, because I was like, why are you going to write it on a tablet so somebody can run? Like, that doesn't make sense, right? And as I sat in meditation and kept asking for the truth behind these words, I was given another vision, and it was that it's kind of more like a baton, right? So the tablet is more like a baton, right? In track and field, for example, if I write all the words that I need to write of my vision and roll it up and hand it off to somebody else, and then they go and they start running with it, what does that mean? That they get to learn everything that I learned and apply it to their situation so that then they can go and do what they need to do too. That's all that it means, okay? It's very simple. So what we do should have a lasting impact on others around us. This is my coach, Les Brown. He's my speaking coach. He taught me that if you shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. A real quick story on how I met Les Brown. I came across him one of those days when I was sitting in meditation in my living room, asking what my purpose was. It was days, y'all, like 10 days in a row that I just sat there every morning. I was like, I'm not leaving until I get this answer. And I saw him on YouTube when I was looking for some motivational videos, and I was enamored. I could not believe the amazing energy that was coming out of this man. And at that moment, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. That was what I wanted to be. He was the person that was going to teach me and all of that. And I made a commitment to myself. I vowed that I would work with Les Brown. And I did. I did a year later, a year after that. So imagine what it would feel like to fulfill the vision in your mind, even if someone else came after you to fulfill it based on what you learned, right? So imagine, for example, the book that I wrote. I wrote the book because I can only tell so many people the idea that I have in my head. But if I write the book, more people would have access to that same idea, right? So maybe I won't be here when we finally latch the gap. Maybe I won't be here. But if someone who read my book is still here, I'm still connected to that vision. All right. And so I want to share with you a picture of a bridge that my great-great-grandfather, Jacob Isliker, built in Ghana. So he was a Swiss German missionary, and he came to Ghana with the Basel Mission, and they actually had him working as an engineer, and he was fine with it. But it was when he wanted to get married, they have a strict rule about they cannot marry women in the Ghanaian community. And he was in love with a woman who was full-blooded Ghanaian. Now, other men had gotten away with marrying mixed Ghanaian women, but because she was full breed, they would not give him permission, and he was not allowed to marry her, not even in the church. They actually ostracized him, kicked him out of the mission, and all of these terrible things. It was very horrible. And my great-great-grandfather could have given up. He could have given up on everything. But instead, he turned his pain into purpose. What he did was he found out that the people who were living in the neighboring areas, the people who were growing the cacao trees, the cocoa plant is the #1 export of Ghana. At that time, it was not. And this is why, because they could not transport the cocoa to the market without the fruit going bad. So when they transferred the fruit, everything would be soiled and falling apart, and by that time they wouldn't make any money from their sales. So what he did was he had an idea that was presented to him to actually build this bridge called the Mitiamo Bridge. And this bridge actually connected them. It crossed over the Dinsu River, and this bridge actually helped them to make it the #1 cash crop. This bridge is the reason today that Ghana is able to export their cocoa so frequently, okay? And so this bridge actually, unfortunately, it fell down during the pandemic. It's no longer there, but it was there for over 110 years, okay? This is my my grandmother on the left. That is my mother's mother, and my mother's father in the middle. And I believe this is her cousin, my mom's cousin. They also went through a similar situation of having to help people in their community and building bridges so that they could overcome some of the obstacles that were going on in their area. See, latch basically just means to close and secure something, okay? And to latch the gap, well, we know that there's a space between where we want to be and where we currently are, right? And so my great-great-grandfather was able to build the bridge, but then this family, his son and his wife, were able to actually continue on using that bridge for the benefit of the community. And then going even further, my mother nursed me. That's me breastfeeding when I was only probably like 8 months or 9 months right there. My mom nursed me, even though she came to America and left all of her family behind in Ghana. And then I also chose to nurse my baby. See, some of the things that we don't consider are some of the things that we learn about ourselves as we go through these different situations. For me, I learned that if I would just take the time to value myself and my time and my decisions and really look more closely at who I am and why I'm here, that I could transform my life. So instead of being focused on worry and self-doubt and self-sabotage and all the things that bring us down, I was able to look into myself. And as I say, just open yourself. I was able to find joy within. Those mornings that I sat there for a long time waiting for the answer, I was able to dig down deep like a treasure hunt, digging, 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 and then finally exposing the treasure and finding joy, right? Joy, and I was able to find purpose. I was able to really find my worth and the belief in myself that I had lacked for so long, even though all y'all thought that I had belief in myself, and confidence more than anything. Confidence to be able to take things to the next level. So I love this quote by Jim Rohn. He says, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. If you work hard on your job, you can make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. Income seldom exceeds personal development. And I use this quote because we're not talking about, money making and all of that, but it's all tied in, right? It's all tied into how we see ourselves, how we perceive ourselves, and how we move forward in our daily decisions. And so I learned to work on me. And see, I think that's the issue that we're dealing with in a lot of the situations with trying to normalize breastfeeding is we have a lot of advocates that are focused on working on the patient, working on the client, working on the mom, delivering the services or the goods or whatever you have for them. But the reality is you got to focus on you. Because when you fill yourself up, now you're to the point that you overflow. And from then, you want to overflow to the point that you now pour from your overflow. You know that saying, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. You can only pour from overflow if you fill yourself up first. And so that's what I learned how to do. That's what completely transformed my life. It doesn't matter what you're studying or how you're studying it. All of it works. All work works. And so I would highly suggest that this is something that, you look into as well. So today for the takeaway, I think we're almost at our time now. I have a few announcements, so stay to the end if you can. But today's takeaway is that your high level goals, they don't need years of planning. They actually need your undivided attention and laser focus. Okay. Because it wasn't until I got focused on that book that I had been writing for 15 years that I was able to write it in 2 months. It wasn't until I got focused on the commercial and advertising aspect of my photography that I started getting noticed and I was able to become a commercial photographer, right? It wasn't until I stopped everything, shut everything down, and just said, I'm not leaving until I know what my purpose is, that I was able to get still and get quiet and finally hear the pathway that had been calling me all along. Okay. So I want to give you this bonus framework before everyone takes off. This bonus framework is the Latch framework. And I created this framework because all of us are, we're breastfeeding advocates, right? We're very familiar with the latch. We're very familiar with how this helping mothers to latch their babies can be just monumental and transformational, right? Well, this latch framework is something that I think is also beneficial because it helps to give the advocate more of an understanding as to what the direction that they're going in, right? So the L for latch stands for learn, right? We all have to learn how to breastfeed first before we can do anything else. I usually say observe first, but for the sake of this framework, we're going to say learn first, right? So you have to learn how to breastfeed your baby. And then when you learn how to breastfeed, you have to apply the knowledge you learned to actually doing the work and showing up for your baby and latching them on, right? Or latching onto a pump if you're pumping, right? Or getting that donor milk, as we mentioned. So you want to learn and then you want to apply. Well, the next thing you want to do is you want to teach. So whatever you've learned and applied to your own life, you now have experience, which means that you can teach. So if you've been hiding behind social media, if you've been sitting on everyone else's Zoom calls, this is your moment to remember that you can teach, okay? Because people need to hear your story and people need to hear your perspective because not everyone is going to speak to everyone's different issues, okay? So the next one is coach. If you learn and you apply, then you can teach. And if you teach, then you can coach. And something that I learned about the difference between income in learning something and coaching something is a lot of revenue. If you learn about the people who are now in the coaching field, there's a lot of money to be made because people are just so desperate for the information. That means that your business does not have to be stuck on only doing breastfeeding consultations, right? Or only showing up when someone needs support. You could be creating online information that could help other people for a lifetime, right? And so I want to give you that vision. And then the H in this framework stands for help others to do the same. And so I'm going to say that one more time. The H in this framework stands for helping others to do the same, right? So when you learn how to breastfeed and you apply that knowledge to yourself, you need to start teaching it, okay? And you need to start helping to coach other people to do it. And that's not the same dynamic as being someone's breastfeeding counselor, right? You're not their coach if you're their counselor. You're their counselor because you're answering their questions and helping them to make decisions to move forward. But a coach is really going to guide you on that path, right? And then help others to do the same. If we helped every mom that came through our doors to learn how to breastfeed, apply that knowledge, teach, coach, and help others to do it, do you think we would still be trying to learn how to normalize breastfeeding? No, friend, we would not be doing that. So I just want to give you this bonus framework and type. I love this framework in the chat if this really resonates for you, because I feel like it's something that can dramatically change the way that we do lactation. Okay. Well, this is time for our big announcement. I'm so excited to announce to you that we are creating and have already launched in the process the Normalized Breastfeeding Network. And we are now open for collaborations with different businesses. We're going to be offering promos. We are going to be running ads. We are going to be helping people with their businesses to get seen on a directory on our website. Now, I'm sure the first thing, if you're a lactation trained provider, is what about the WHO code? What about the WHO code? Don't worry, we've already considered all of that. We've already taken the steps, and we're also going to be offering a webinar coming up called Milk Marketing Matters. So keep an eye out for that, because that's going to be really great, and it's going to be for the businesses that want to collaborate with us. So I want to give a shout out to Utterly, the breast milk marketplace. They are our first applicant who has been approved to join the network. So I just want to give them a shout out, and just type I'm interested in the chat if this is something that you want for your business, if you want to be able to be recognized in the Normalized Breastfeeding Network. Let me know in the chat, and we'll try to get some information to you after we're done, okay? So that was our big announcement, but I also have a couple more things for you. So today we have actually opened up the pre-order for signed copies of my book. And I'm really excited about this because this book, like I said, it's been a labor of love. It has been a book that has made me feel like I'm finally walking on that path. I'm finally feeling like I can do it, you know. And I'm finally feeling like I've gotten to the place where, you know, I don't think there's ever such thing as I've made it, right? And that hit me hard when I was in that hotel room in Philadelphia. But it's more about not making it. It's about being present and being aware, and understanding how your actions require accountability so that you can best guide people on their path, okay? So if you're interested in buying my book, please feel free to go ahead and grab your pre-order signed copy at the link book.latchthegap.com. I appreciate it so much. And I also want to say that we have a giveaway. So we created a new Facebook group for this training, and for people who want to join the Latch the Gap Leaders Facebook group. The link should be in your email. If you didn't receive it, just let us know in the chat and we'll get it to you. Or you can use this link in the chat. It says it's the Facebook link there for the giveaway. So all you have to do is just post your personal takeaways from today's training inside of the Facebook group and use this hashtag day1 giveaway. We're going to give one on each and every day. You can post you can go ahead and post it right here in the chat. You can post your takeaways here in the chat. That's fine if you're not on Facebook. I understand. Some people are like, no more social media. I've kind of been like that too. Okay. So this is the giveaway. So I would love to have, I would love to be able to give away a copy of the book as well. So all you have to do is either post your takeaways here in the chat, or you can post them in the Facebook group. All right. And the last thing is, I want to offer everyone who's joined this training for the next 3 days a special complimentary invitation to do a vision assessment with me for 60 minutes. It's a one-on-one appointment. These appointments are few and far between. My schedule gets super booked, and I have to block off time where I can no longer take calls. So if any of the information that we've spoken about today resonates with you, or it makes you feel like maybe you're not on the right path, or maybe you need to get clear on your goals and your vision, I want you to book this call with me so that I can kind of walk you through some of the things that might be, you know, some of the good things, but also the things that might be weighing you down, might be holding you back, might be making you feel stuck where you are, right? If you're interested in that, I want you to click that link, apply.latchthegap.com, because that's going to give you the opportunity to meet with me one-on-one, okay? So it's apply.latchthegap.com. And it's just going to take you over to you're going to put your email in, and it's going to take you over to another link where you can actually pick a time on my calendar. Okay. And You're also going to have to check your email to make sure you confirm the subscription. So that way, if I send out any emails to you, you actually receive them. So just make sure you check your email after you do that. All right. But that was everything. I feel like day one has been amazing. I hope you understand so much more about how to envision the future that you want for yourself and how to even communicate that to your clients, to your friends and family, because we've got to help parents to be able to envision the birth that they want, envision the breastfeeding experience they want. And even though we don't always get what we want, putting focused energy toward it is what actually helps it to manifest. And so I hope that you guys took a lot from today. I hope you got a lot of value out of today. And I will take questions if you guys are, if anyone has any questions, we'll stay for about 5 minutes and take questions. All right. Oh, I love this. Yes. Ruth says, I'm energized by the Latch framework to help spread the word throughout the community. So important. I love that. And so let me just go here. There we go. All right. And if nobody has any questions, that's fine. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time, same place. And tomorrow we'll be discussing decision. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. All right. Take care. So again, welcome to this training. 3 powerful steps to help you strategize about how you normalize breastfeeding in 2023. And, this year it's just, I'm all about strategy. I'm all about making sure that we have something in place that is really going to help us to actually achieve these goals that we've set for ourselves. And as advocates, it can be rather difficult because we know what the goals are for moms, right, who are breastfeeding. We know what their goals are. But have we stopped to set our goals? Have we stopped to really start to think and identify what are the things we need to be focusing on? Because I feel like when we actually take the time to do that, then we're going to be in a much better place, and we're actually going to get the outcome we're looking for, as opposed to just hoping that something great happens, right? Like I could have started the normalized breastfeeding movement and just hoping that something great was going to come out from it. But instead, I was very strategic, right? I was already a photographer, so I used that medium to be able to communicate, there's the story of normalizing breastfeeding. And then as time went on, I was able to set new goals, or set and adjust the goals that I already had, right? So let me know in the chat if you are trying to identify what your goals are for 2023 and how you can normalize breastfeeding either in your business or in your personal life. Let me know if you're trying to set goals for yourself as well. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. It's the Powerhouse Advocate Training Day 2. And we've already had some people share their name and their city in the comments, but it's roll call. So if you want to share, you go ahead and you can right now. Again, what to expect, this is not an average webinar. For those of you who come back from yesterday, you might be thinking, wow, that was jam-packed full of powerful information, and it didn't feel like a presentation, didn't feel like a boring webinar that I have to keep my eyes open to and try to take all the notes that I can, right? It's more of an atmosphere of creating that enthusiasm and rejuvenating you and refreshing you so that you can go out and do this work that is very daunting and it is very difficult. And so I'm showing up today and this week so that you can begin to shift your focus and gain clarity so that you can start moving forward toward authenticity in your business and in your life and how you show up for other families. So a lot of my message is off trend. There's a lot of truth bombs. I do share personal stories, and I do also share bonus frameworks at the end. So make sure you stay for that. And of all the things that I'm talking about today, I want you to know my intention and my my goal for the day is to focus on your full potential. And so as I share different stories, it'll be my story, but I want you to think about yourself and focus on yourself. And I also want you to know that I'm going to challenge some commonly held beliefs, and I'm going to focus on you. So don't worry if I get a little bit silly with some things, just go with it, enjoy the laugh, right? And I've made the huge announcement already, which is that we are now a network that is going to be promoting other businesses. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end and why we decided to take that route, because it's layered and it's awesome. And then I'm going to make an offer at the end for you to continue working with me in a very awesome way, which is absolutely free. And so stay to the end so that you can get that information as well. So yesterday we talked about being here, right? In this journey of supporting families and really feeling like we are anxious about this work, right? We know the statistics, we know the disparities, we know that some things are just happening out of emergency, but the majority of things are just being funneled into this very detrimental maternal health care system, right? And so we're starting to feel stuck as to how we can really see a turnaround in a significant period of time or even in our lifetimes, right? And it can leave a lot of us feeling overwhelmed and feeling unfulfilled in this work. Right. And so it's just so important that we analyze these things and take note of how we're feeling, because what we want is to feel relaxed, right? We want to feel powerful. We want to feel fulfilled and courageous and excited. And we want to overflow with the joy really that comes from breastfeeding. So if we think about back when, well, if any of you have ever breastfed a baby, you know that it is intense and it is hard. It is arduous. There are so many different things that can break the journey, right? But when you accomplish it and breastfeeding becomes just a normal task during the day, it becomes joyful. It becomes something that really fills you up with so much purpose. And so after weaning our last baby, I actually discovered that breastfeeding was my purpose in life until I was no longer breastfeeding. And I felt like that really, it broke me down as far as being a mother postpartum and not knowing who I was anymore. It helped me to re-identify my goals and redefine my purpose as a woman and a mother. And so we're going to go ahead and jump right into day 2, because I'm sure that you have an amazing talent or a gift, but you just don't have the right idea or the time to make it happen, right? And maybe it's just energy. Maybe you're just low on energy because of all the amazing things that you're doing every single day to support your family and your community. And as parents and advocates and professionals, we've been taught to prioritize everyone else and prioritize work and the things that just keep us busy and keep us like kind of on that hamster wheel, right? And the things that kind of bring us down. Like if you think about social media, yeah, we're trying to normalize breastfeeding, but at the same time, there's like so much negative information happening on the platform that a lot of us don't even want to use it. Yesterday, someone was saying, I was mentioning the giveaway and they were saying, oh, I'm not on Facebook. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not even worried about it. It's okay. Same thing with me. I took some time and I stepped away because sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. Well, yesterday I asked you all to tell me one word or a phrase that describes how you're feeling about this huge task to normalize breastfeeding, because we know it's multifaceted, right? And some of the words that were shared yesterday were like daunting and exhausting and just words that were very negative, right? And so we have to start to think about how this can impact the movement if the very people who were put there to serve the people who want to do the thing feel like crap, right? Like we have to kind of think about how this is going to impact the journey of the families, okay? And so just to really quickly define the word, so I'm jumping ahead of myself. Sorry. Let me tell you a quick story, because today's day 2, and it's all about decisions. So day 1, we talked about envision, and we talked about understanding that when you can see your vision clearly, then you can start to make decisions that are in alignment with the goal that you have or the desire that you want. And then you can begin to position yourself and get into position. So for anyone who jumped on today just to find out what these 3 steps are, I didn't want to keep you waiting. Here they are. Write them down, screenshot it, whatever you need to do. And I hope that that helps you, but stay so that you can find out what they mean. All right. So deciding to do something new can be scary, right? And the actual definition of a decision is a conclusion or a resolution reached after consideration, right? And so your decisions are going to get you to a point where you're eventually going to have to make a decision about the decision. Don't get confused. I know it sounds a little bit wonky, but think about it. When you're making a decision, you have to sit and consider everything that you know about this thing, right? Your pros, your cons, any external factors that can come up, right? You have to think about all of these things. And so when I say you have to make a decision about your decision, a decision requires that you surrender to the vision that you've already set for yourself. So let's say, number 1, if you're at the point of making a decision and you don't even have a vision of what it's going to look like in the end, you're already off track. Okay. If you have to make a decision, you need to first go back and make the vision. Create the vision in your mind of what you want it to look like at the end. So that way, as you start to work through some of the different obstacles around the decision, everything will start to become more clear because you're trying to make it align with the vision that you have. Okay. So if you don't have the vision, get the vision first, then come make the decision. If you've got the vision, you want to use that vision to really help you to guide your direction. Okay. And so yesterday I talked a little bit about how I stopped working so that I could homeschool our children. And I just ended up at the edge of myself. I was waking up every single night with panic attacks and in cold sweats and just feeling like my dreams were slipping away from me. Imagine yourself right now. Imagine yourself being in a place where the decision you have to make is just so difficult. Every decision requires surrender. And the surrender is to the vision that you already have. Now, if you don't have the vision, this is where it's going to get really difficult. This is where the panic attacks are going to get really hard. This is where the cold sweats are going to come out of nowhere because you're allowing yourself to try to make a decision without having any vision in mind. That is making your decision making at least 10 times harder. I don't have a stat for that, but I can tell you right now from personal experience, it's a lot more difficult to make a decision without a vision. So without surrender, you can see the result, but you can't actually see yourself taking the steps to get there. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat. Give me a 1 in the chat if that completely resonates for you. Because what's happening is you can't see where the steps that you're going to take because you're actually in your own way. And that actually is a form of self-sabotage. Like kind of when you commit to doing something, but then when it comes time to get it done, you're like full of all the excuses in the world, right? My children, my dog, my class, my whatever it might be, right? You've got all the excuses in the world and you're not getting it done. And so what you need to do is align your vision with the decision, right? So if you already know what you want, then when you make the decision, you're calculating everything according to what you want. That's the way that this works, okay? The act of surrender is actually a process within itself. So it's a 3-step process. First, you have to become aware of the aware of the fact that you are in your own way. That's the first step of making a decision, right? If you realize that you're in the own way, you have to become aware of that. And sometimes if we're not in a space to receive the concept of how could I stand in my own way, then we can't actually see that, right? And so then You need to decide that you're going to get out of your way, right? So that decision required another decision of you choosing to simultaneously surrender and get out of your own way. And then the final step is you actually got to go do it. You actually got to go and get out of your way, right? And so the definition of surrender is to cease the resistance to an enemy or an opponent, and submit to their authority. So in your case, the enemy is you, right? You're standing in your own way. I don't know if you've ever heard the quote. Someone said, you are your own worst enemy, right? And like, you never understand that until you completely stop and realize and hold yourself accountable to all the little ways that you stood in your own way. Give me a 2 in the chat if that completely resonated with you, because I honestly believe that the more that we're able to connect with our vision and use that to align with our decisions, then you're actually going to put yourself in a much better place when you're trying to get to your outcomes, right? You're not going to be as overwhelmed or stressed. You're not going to have as much anxiety. You're going to approach it with more joy and with more possibility and more of an open mind and an open heart. Okay. So I talked about, my story yesterday, and it's funny, I could have made so many different decisions based on what was happening, based on these circumstances in my life. But instead, I chose the one that was within me. But let me talk about some of these decisions I could have made. I could have called the doctor for a psych eval, right? Why am I having all these panic attacks in the middle of the night, right? I could have taken a prescription to help me go to sleep, right? And just stop getting the panic attacks at all, which were put there on purpose to help me to realize that I hadn't discovered my purpose in life, right? So I could have just put a Band-Aid on it, right? And made it seem like, everything's all good. I just need this pill and I can go to sleep and everything's fine, right? We do that a lot. We tell people, they ask us how we're doing, and we tell them we're fine. We tell them we're fine. I don't know about you, but I'm not living a life that just wants to be fine. I'm living a life that I want to see my absolute full potential so that I can impact the world in a huge way. Like, I'm the type of person, I don't want to leave this planet without people knowing who I was. And it's not because I think I'm great. It's because I know and believe and have value in my inherent talents, skills, and abilities and gifts, right? And so I could have done these different things. I could have made, I could even tried like reading, right? Like every time I wake up and I can't sleep, I'll try reading. And usually that puts me straight to sleep. Especially if I'm reading scripture. I don't know why, but that's the number one thing. It'll put me down. The other thing is writing in my journal. I could have just written in my journal, but instead I chose to go straight to the source. And when I say that, I'm talking about my creator. I talk about waking up at 5 a.m. every day, some days without even my alarm. I was up before my entire family so that I could just enjoy the stillness of the morning. And as I sat there in meditation, I would get to the very root of the issues that I was dealing with, the things that were causing me so much stress. And that helped me to be able to look at it so that I could begin to fix it, right? We can't just say, oh, I want to fix it, and then slap a Band-Aid type solution on it and think everything is going to be fine, because it's not, okay? And so what I decided to do was get to the source, and I decided to look within myself, and boom, everything came to the light. I unlocked my intuition, and that gives you the power of decision. Your intuition is literally what's within you, helping you to make these choices, right? And so I was able to go from, just a wife and a mom to a photographer who was traveling the world with her baby on her back and producing a tour and presenting at different conferences, and turn my life around and become a speaker and an author and a coach. And so with this powerful step of decision, there are some really interesting facts that you need to know about it, because When you decide, like I did, to go within yourself, you're not going to be the victim. You're not going to allow yourself to get away with that roller coaster of emotion anymore. You're going to stop and start holding yourself accountable and telling yourself, no, you said you were going to do this, and this is what you actually did. And now we need to go back and correct it, right? Because it does take some course correction to be able to know for sure that this is what you need to do, right? I decided to discover myself once and for all, instead of putting that Band-Aid on top of all the things that were disrupting my life. And I decided to stop chasing my dreams and start taking action in the direction and alignment with my high level goals that I had for my life. So if you have high level goals for your life, I just want you to put goals in the chat. If you have some big goals, if you have a big vision, but you can't figure out how to take the steps to get there, put that in the chat, goals, because today we're going to be talking more about your goals and what you need to do to get there. Okay. So some of these statistics, it's crazy. People make 226 decisions just on food every day, just deciding what they want to eat. Isn't that crazy? A total of 35,000 choices are made per individual per day, according to Cornell University. You know, from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you lay your head on the pillow, you're making decisions. Even the decision just to get up is a decision, right? And so if those decisions are not in alignment with the desired goal that you have, it's not going to get you to where you want to be. It's not going to get you to the outcome that you want. So if you really want to have what you want, you have to start envisioning, thinking about it deeply, really putting yourself in a space where you can see it clearly. I know some people, they like to use their journal, right, to get that vision out. Sometimes they even like to illustrate little drawings because it helps them to see it more clearly, right? And that is the way you will manifest your reality, not by just wishing it into existence. You've got to do the work, right? And so these decision-making statistics help me to see that decision-making is not a calculation. It's actually an emotional process. And I don't know about you, I don't know if you're aware of this, but your emotions are tied to everything spiritual. All that means is that it's happening inside, it's internal, it's not external. So the decisions that you're making, let's say, I want you to think right now, think back to a decision that you made that was a mistake. Okay, that's the easiest thing to think of, right? Think about this mistake. Now, don't beat yourself up about it. I just want you to think about it for the purpose of thinking about what was going on with you internally when you made that decision. Because usually, if the internal is not going in the direction of these goals, then the external won't follow. You have to start within. You know, I was looking into some of the steps and I found this study done by the National Center of Biotechnology Information. And they actually have a 4-step process that happens in your mind or in your brain, I should say, not in your mind. Those are two different things. That's a totally different training for another day. But there's a 4-step process that happens in your brain to actually help you make a decision. And so I'm not going to use any of their really fancy terminology, but I tried to break it down and make it just layman's terms. So first, you have something that stimulates your senses, and your prefrontal cortex begins to process that information. And it in turn stimulates another part of the brain called the hippocampus. And then step 2 is secondary stimuli arrive at the hippocampus. So that could be things that are happening internally, right? Because your senses are external. We know this, right? Your senses are sight, smell, touch, sound, and what's the other one? I said touch. Or am I missing one? Sight, sound, touch, sense. Oh, smell. That was the other one, right? So first your brain receives the external stimuli. And then it's funny because when I tried to make this in layman's terms, I was like, what are they talking about? Secondary stimuli. And it didn't hit me until right now, as I'm sitting here telling you. That's the internal stimuli. Something inside of you is also coming to the hippocampus and saying, all right, I know you got that information. That's great. But we also got this other thing we're working on over here. So y'all just need to know, right? And then a neural response is produced as initial information. Okay, so let's say that initial stimuli is your goal, right? You write your goal out, your brain sees it, and then all of a sudden, bam, you get hit with internal stimuli, which might be fear. It might be anxiety. It might be, I'm not ready for this, or maybe I'll do this next year, or I've got too much time on my plate, right? All the excuses, they just show up as soon as we've got to make a decision, right? And so your internal stimuli shows up after the external stimuli is received. They produce a response, and that is the first information. After that, the initial information that's transmitted to the prefrontal cortex, it determines if any additional or complementary information is necessary. So that's when you start to seek out, well, maybe I can do it this way, or maybe I can do it that way. Maybe I don't have to do the whole thing, right? Finally, in the fourth step, your prefrontal cortex is going to decide the actual decision, but it's deciding all while it's communicating with the hippocampus, which means that your external and your internal are not separate. And people always like to do this. They like to say, oh, well, you know, that's your belief and that's fine. And you can have that, whatever. Okay, that's fine. But your beliefs inside of you are working on you too. So just remember that, right? And so I like to say that I spent time in meditation every day. Why? Because I knew that there was something inside of me that was waking me up to have these panic attacks. And I could either wake up in that spirit of negativity and angst, or I could wake up because I decided to wake up and find out what my brain was trying to tell me. Okay. And I really honestly believe to this day that that was an experience I had with my creator. I believe that on my living room couch that morning, that I was sitting there just in the presence of my creator, and that was what helped me to align my decision with the vision that I had of homeschooling our children. Okay. Now, I also talk about how I meditated on scripture every day. Scripture is a great resource. It's something that helps us to really look within ourselves and discern truth and identify where we just might be a little self-centered and we need to, pivot a little, right? And so after I did this, boom, everything exploded. I went from, just doing my own little thing to doing these really huge collaborations. I mean, everything changed. Everything changed. I went from being speaking on our tour to speaking on stages and conferences. I went from photographing moms for $100 a month to photographing for big commercial campaigns that were paying me 5 figures, right? And so it was something strange that happened with me, and I couldn't figure out what it was that changed. I had to literally go back and study myself to figure out what had happened. So I want to talk about this stuck in the gap type of feeling. And this is a slide out of another presentation that I offer that is kind of helping people to understand why they're stuck in the gap. And a lot of times when you're stuck in a gap, it will affect you to the extent of your income. Okay. So I just want you to see that it's costing you money to stay in that old mindset and that old habit of getting anxious, being worried, being fearful, feeling overwhelmed. All of that is costing you money. And I know for a fact that in this work, we don't make a lot of money. So it's costing you more money. That's even worse, right? So you want to figure out how to replace those hours and hours of worry and feeling unsure and insecure and not taking any steps forward. You want to replace that with a different type of action, right? So I just wanted you to see this visual because a lot of people don't realize that those feelings that are internal, they affect your external too, right? And so I hear people say all the time, and I talk about this in the book, Latch the Gap. People say knowledge is power. And I challenged that idea in my book. And I said, no, knowledge is not power. And I quoted that it is actually only potential. And you have to apply the knowledge to actually get the power out of it. But the real power is understanding why and when to apply that knowledge and wisdom. Because the wisdom is the power. The wisdom is where you actually start to see change. The wisdom is going back and studying yourself and realizing that you were standing in your own way, and that when you were finally willing to get out of your way, that you could see different results for yourself. Okay. Because honestly, I could have just said, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm just going to homeschool. And I could have put all that financial pressure on my husband, who was not ready to take care of all of us without my income, right? And so I could have done that. But instead, I knew that the problem that I was dealing with was not external. I knew it was within myself. I knew that if I could just tap into who I could feel was trying to get my attention from the inside out, that I could really figure this thing out and I could change my life. Sometimes you just have to get out of your own way. Sometimes it's as simple as just looking in the mirror and saying, honey, you got work to do. Right. And so those choices led me to the life that I'm living now, where I'm not just doing little things here and there. I'm making big impact in people's lives because I was willing to look at myself and see where I was failing myself. I wasn't failing anyone else. I was failing myself. And I wanted to unlock my greatness. I wanted to discover who I was supposed to be and what I was put here to do, right? And so I want you to think a little bit about, what would have happened if I didn't get out of my own way, right? What could my decision to keep my career affect my children's homeschool experience? How could it affect my children's homeschool experience? If I decided, no, I'm going to work, I don't know what to tell y'all, I don't know what's what would be the point, right? And if I decided, oh, I'm just going to keep doing this and y'all will figure out homeschool, it'll be fine. Like, they're not going to be fine. They're not going to be fine. And I think that's the one thing that drives me the most crazy about the way that parents who made poor decisions during their parenthood. Yes, we know that they did what they could with what they had, right? Not judging anyone, but we all know when we've made poor decisions, and we all know when we have poor decision-making skills. So when they reflect and they see that they've made poor decisions, that's what people say. They say, they'll be fine. And I don't think it's fair to a whole new generation of people for us to raise them, telling them that it's fine. I formula fed after breastfeeding. I formula fed because I had to, because of postpartum. It was not what I wanted to do, but I never told my babies that they would be fine. They always knew that I was doing this because it was the absolute last resort that I had available to myself to feed and sustain them. So it's important that we kind of start to hold ourselves accountable. Even in the work, when we're working with parents, start to hold our parents accountable, because at the end of the day, they might feel judged, but if you never hold them accountable and no one else ever does, but you have the opportunity to, they might not ever get the lesson, right? So sometimes we're put in a person's life so that we can speak into their life and say, no, honey, no, that's not how you do this, right? And sometimes it's you trying to figure out what exactly it is that you decided wrong or what led you to that decision. Some people get caught up in the judgment and they don't realize, like, if they just looked introspected toward the decisions they were making and how they were feeling when they were making those decisions, then they would know for a fact that they would know exactly that that was coming from inside of them, right? It was not coming from the outside. So our external is definitely going to be impacted by our internal. All right. All right. So, when we also want to think about who can make the necessary changes to the way that we make our decisions. Well, only we can, right? Only we can. And why is it important for us to work on ourselves and make more aligned decisions? Because it's impacting everyone in our lives. I call it this ripple effect of commitment. So when you commit to yourself and you commit to do the things that you actually say you're going to do, you feel amazing. Like me showing up for this 3-day live event and I'm the only one hosting the event, trust me, I feel amazing. Why? Because I stayed true to myself and I stayed committed to my word. Yes, I know that people are showing up, but I still have a decision every single day as to whether I'm going to get set up, whether I'm going to work on my notes, whether I'm going to put together my slides, right? But commit to yourself first. And then when you start showing up for yourself, it makes it that much easier to show up for every single person around you. Okay. So I think someone drew on my slides. I'm not sure what happened. Somebody use the screen share. Please don't use the screen share. I can't go into the settings right now and fix it, but it is what it is. Maybe if let me stop my share and then I'm going to restart it because I have a big red line through my slides. It looks funny. Let's see if this works. Okay, it worked. Perfect. All righty. So let's go on to the next slide. All right. So I love this scripture. It's taken from Luke 2:17. And by the way, for anyone who's wondering who wasn't here yesterday, because I talked a little bit about how I read all of the scriptures during the year 2020, from the beginning to the end. And all the hidden books and lost books that people talk about all the time. I read all of them. And it completely changed my life. I started to see who I was, why I was here, and what I needed to do. And this verse was the verse that unlocked everything. Nor shall they say, look here or look there. For look, the reign of Elohim is in your midst. Okay, this is from the Hebrew version. So walk with me while I try to break all this down. So this was the Messiah speaking. Most people call him Jesus. I call him the Messiah. The Messiah was speaking and he said, people are going to say, hey, look over there. I see the kingdom. Or look over there. I see the kingdom. But he said, look, the reign, which is the kingdom of the Most High, Elohim, is in your midst. In your midst means within you. And a lot of times, I've read this scripture, I don't know how many times in my lifetime, but after I went through and read the entire scriptures and I had context of what this book was talking about, which is, by the way, not a religious book. It's actually a book about government and the reign of a kingdom of a sovereign king. It's not about religion. So I'm just going to say that if you have questions about that, you can email me and I'll talk to you all day long about that part. But I want you to know that you have to understand that what we keep looking for it everywhere outside of us when the answer is in us. The answer is actually in us, right? And so I love this quote from Maya Angelou. She actually, I use this quote and this is also what helped me to title my book, which is do the best the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Right. And so that was the message in the book. The message is more toward the advocates, helping parents who know better to learn how to do better. Right. And so with these 3 steps we're talking about this week, that's going to help you to do that because they're in alignment with what we talk about in the book. So, the results that came from me looking within myself were internal, but they were really external too. Like I stepped away from social media. I stopped taking clients. I started focusing on myself and my health and my true wealth that was within me. that no one could take away, that no one could get rid of, that no one could tell me to be quiet, right? I started to look for that hidden wealth that was within myself. So I'm going to give you a moment. I wanted to do this yesterday, but we ran out of time. So it looks like we still got a little bit of time. I want you to take a moment, everyone, and I want you to take 3 big, deep breaths. Do this with me. And you can close your eyes while we do it. First big breath in and out. Again, in, expanding your belly, and out. And again, in and out. I want you to keep your eyes closed. And I just want you to imagine what it would feel like to start making decisions that are in alignment with the vision that you have for yourself. Now, that might seem difficult, but what I want you to do now is stop and focus on the vision. So I want you to think about, if you could normalize breastfeeding, if you only had 1 year to normalize breastfeeding, what would you do? What is the thing that your heart most deeply desires? What is the way that you want to show up for families? What is the thing that makes your method so different and unique? I want you to sit there and think about that for just a moment. Continue breathing. Now imagine yourself before your external stimuli, like we talked about, before your internal stimuli comes in and says, no, I can't do that. I'm too afraid, or I don't have enough money, or I'm too worried, or what if this happens? What if that happens? I don't want you to listen to any of those internal voices. I just want you to see the vision and sit with it. I want you to even try to just smile as you're sitting there thinking about this vision. Think about all the ways that it would bring you joy, all the ways that it would fill you up to be able to serve the community in this way. Don't focus on any details of your business or any particulars, just the vision. All right. Go ahead and open your eyes. I want you to take a moment and write it down. You can write it in the chat. If you don't have paper, if you have paper and pencil, just jot down a couple of things that will help you to remember the vision that you had. Because I want you to imagine what your life would feel like if you were finally able to make decisions that align with your biggest life goals. Because those decisions are only going to take you where you're going. And if you don't have a clear vision, you're not going to know. And you're not going to know what decisions to make. Okay. Because after I decided to start going within myself, I truly started to understand the value of rest. I stopped trying to be everywhere to everyone at every time. I stopped reaching out, not because I didn't care, but because I knew that I needed me. I needed to show up for me. I learned how to reflect and look back on the good and the bad and realize where some of it was just me standing in my own way. And on top of all of that, you're going to start to learn how to reset yourself when you start going back to those old paradigms and those old mindsets and those old habits, right? You're going to start to see that what you really need is to go within yourself and reset the way that you're thinking about things. If you're focused on the negative, reset and start focusing on the positive so that you can see how that will impact your external. Okay. Because there's definitely, there's no actual definition of the term powerhouse advocate, but based on the dictionary, the definition of a powerhouse is a person, a group, or a team, or the like, having great energy and strength and potential for success, right? And the definition of a legal powerhouse is shifting from that of an adversarial pit bull to a connected, vocal, strategically minded individual who acts firstly as a business enabler and critical thinker and as an interpreter of the law. So when I take those two definitions and just kind of put them together, I came up with my own definition of powerhouse advocate. And I say that it's a person or group having great energy, strength, or potential for success who shifts from an adversary position to a connected, vocal, strategic-minded individual or organization that acts firstly as a dyad enabler and critical thinker and an interpreter of vision. See how that works? Because all of these words are very similar. We're not very different from someone who's making a case for someone who's in court. We have very similar traits. And so what I want you to think about when you think about that definition is what it means to you. And what does it mean to shift from an adversarial position to one that's connected? Because look at how the movement started. The movement started with just a hashtag, right? And this hashtag was floating around, and anyone and their mom was using this hashtag. And some really bad posts, including pornographic posts, which I scrolled upon, were coming up with this hashtag before the normalized breastfeeding movement as an organization existed, right? And I made a decision to shift from being the person who was combative and the person who was just trying to bang everyone's door down to being more connected. When I was able to look within myself, I was able to see where I was missing the very things I needed and already had to serve my community. Okay. Because just like the other slide that I showed from my other presentation, this is what you really want. And this is how you see it happen. When you have aligned goals, you increase your value and your income. And it doesn't happen by just trying to demand more money. It doesn't happen by just trying to go out and get more clients. It doesn't happen by, redoing the website and putting all the things up and saying, hey, here we are, we're open for business, come in. That's not what happens. See, what happens is when you become aligned with your vision, you start to express that vision in different ways. Like you focus on the things of the vision that bring you joy. You focus on the things that give you a why and keep you motivated to keep moving forward. It helps you to see your worth and your value in this scenario. You start to build belief around the habits and the different things that you start to become consistent around. And ultimately, you build confidence. Because the takeaway for today is if your value is hidden within your vision, then you have to use decision to unlock the door of your desires. But make sure that that decision is aligned with the vision, right? That's the only way that we can really and truly start to see change happen in our lives. So I want to share with you, before we go to the framework, I want to share with you this insight that I had the other day as I was creating my my presentation for this training. There's 3 different ways that I see that people show up in our community. The first one is an advocate, right? An advocate is someone who speaks up through conversation or in person for the birth and breastfeeding family and in front of providers, right? That's an advocate. An activist is someone who strives to change politically or policy-driven type of justice. They seek justice for birth and breastfeeding families with policymakers, okay? And then the last one that I love, that I think all advocates should strive to be, is not an activist, because I think people think activism is where it ends. No, activism is actually really closer to the adversarial pit bull, okay? But we don't see that because we're just so gung-ho about our vision. The final step is becoming an asset. Becoming an asset to the community is someone who is a creator. So you're not just someone speaking up for someone else. You're not just someone who's striving for policy change. You're someone who's creating and taking action to create solutions for the problems in the birth and breastfeeding community. And the asset is who is most aligned with a powerhouse advocate. So if you're questioning, am I a powerhouse advocate? I don't know if I'm really there, but I kind of type guilty in the chat if you feel like you were coming to this training to either become a powerhouse advocate or because you thought you already were one. Just type guilty in the chat, because I thought I was a powerhouse advocate too. I really did, before I went within myself to figure it out, right? An advocate, a powerhouse advocate, is an asset to their community. They create solutions to the problems within their community. I love this quote from Kimberly Sills Allers. She says, if you're looking for a solution to the problem, it's in the community. It's in the community. So if you're looking for a solution to your problems, where is it? It's inside. It's internal. Okay. So I hope you have loved this training today. And I am going to go ahead and share with you our bonus framework for today. It's the asset framework. And this one is super easy. The first A is always, okay, and everything else is going to follow. So always surrender, study, equip, and train. And that goes for yourself. So let's put it in the past tense and say, always, in parentheses, stay surrendered, studied, equipped, and trained. Which means that if you're always surrendering to that intuitive part of yourself that just needs to know, and you're always studying yourself, and you're always equipping yourself with new information or new trainings, and you're always being trained to have the things that you need as well, you are going to become an asset to your community. You can't even fight it. You can't even try, because you're going to hear some things, especially in the equipping and in the training pieces, that are going to dramatically transform your life. Now, if you hear these things and you decide not to act on them, that's also a decision. So remember, make decisions in alignment with the goal that you have. And if that vision is so big, my apologies. If that vision is so big that you need to scale back and start taking smaller steps, then do that. But don't become fearful. Don't become worried, right? We want to see you go from that overwhelmed to overflow. Okay. All right. So going back to our announcements, we made a huge announcement that we are now opening the Normalized Breastfeeding Network. We're opening our applications to receive applicants for people who want to collaborate, promote, advertise, and be named on our directory. We're so excited to have our very first applicant, Utterly, who was approved by our board. And in case you're wondering about Who Code, we've already considered all of that, and we'll be sharing a new webinar called Milk Marketing Matters very soon. So be sure to stay tuned to your emails for that. But yesterday I was pressed for time, and I realized that I went over the most significant fact of this network, the purpose of this network, and that is to create a scholarship fund for peer support. What we want to do as educators is train more educators. I don't know if you've heard this quote before, but someone says, you've always got to be trying to work yourself out of a job. Why? Because that means that you actually care about the problems that exist in your industry. If you can solve the problems, yes, you're reducing the work, but you're solving the problems. And now you can move on to creating more solutions, right? And so our goal with the Normalized Breastfeeding Network is to create a space where lactation businesses can advertise their business and in return, we can provide scholarships to moms who are interested in pursuing their education in lactation. Right. So we've always heard of advertising as this very negative thing in the breastfeeding community because of WHO code. But what people fail to remember is that formula companies don't care about our WHO code. United States didn't even sign the WHO code, right? So because of that, we are inundated with advertising that is formula focused all day long. So we want to add very positive and uplifting and actually solution-based type of advertising into the mix by promoting lactation businesses and people who are approved through our board and our application process. All right. So the awesome thing about this is once we start receiving new members, we can start giving out scholarships. And if it wasn't for the scholarship that I received from the San Diego County Breastfeeding Coalition, I would never have become a lactation educator. The only reason I even attempted to do it was because a scholarship was available. And so I know the value that it gave me and what it did in my life, because after I took the educator program, I actually started to see that breastfeeding is connected to everything. And I know you guys probably already know that, but when I found out, I was like, whoa, like I thought I was just doing this normalized breastfeeding thing. But once I became an educator, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's literally connected to how we live our lives. It's connected to our intimate relationships. It's connected to everything, right? And so the power that we are trying to transcend to the community is that if we support our own community by uplifting them and promoting them, we can also bring in new people who want to do the same on a scholarship. And now guess what? Now it's becoming a peer network. Now the peers are able to guide themselves as far as the education so that the lactation consultants can come in and just do their job, which is clinically deciding if the mother needs any additional resources, right? But the education piece really should be it should be an everyday normal thing of life. So we believe that normalizing breastfeeding starts with the education and the education of the moms, especially who want to become lactation educators themselves. Okay. So our next announcement is my book is available for pre-order, and you can actually, I don't think my assistant is in right now. So I'll post the link in the chat. But the book is actually available for pre-order now, the printed copy. And if you pre-order, I'm giving you a signed copy. So I'm going to put this link in the chat and you can grab your copy of the signed book. Okay. That is for the book. All right. And, this book was a labor of love. I wrote this book 15 years ago in a totally different form. And because of my fear, I never committed to finishing it. But once I got clear, once I got away from everything, shut down the social media and everything, I was able to see that this book was the only thing that really mattered. And I was able to set my sight on that goal and then align all of my decisions with that goal. And that's why now you can see the book in our hands, right? It's here, it's ready. All right. And so the next thing is we have a giveaway today. So we have a giveaway of normalized breastfeeding tour merch of your choice. So all you have to do is either in the comments, if you're in the chat, if you're not on Facebook and in our group, you can do it in the chat right here. But I just want to hear your personal takeaway from today, what you learned, what sparked your mind, what caught your eye, what it made you think about. All I want to hear is that, and we'll pick someone from the comments. We had a winner yesterday. Her name is Ruth. I don't think she's here today, but I'll get in contact with her and let her know that she won a signed copy of the book yesterday. So all you have to do is write something in the chat about how or what you learned today, and we will put you in the giveaway. Okay. And then our last announcement is I am offering, and don't take this lightly because I honestly don't provide a lot of what's the word? My calendar is very, very tight. Let me just put it like that. So I'm offering a special complimentary invitation to do a vision assessment with me for 60 minutes one-on-one. You can book a call with me, and that I'm going to put the link in the chat. Don't worry. That is actually going to help you to start to see where the gaps actually exist. See, a lot of times we know that there's a gap, but we don't know exactly in relation to us where it is and how to fix it and how to get past it, right? And so I created the vision assessment because I started to see that some people thought that their vision was okay or it was great, but there were these gaps that they were missing. And then in the vision assessment, I was able to sit down and break it down with them. So you complete an application with a vision of the assessment, and then I come on and deal with you one-on-ones for 60 minutes, and we talk about your answers, and I give you the insights to where I see the gaps. So I would love for y'all to book a call with me. I'm gonna put this link in the chat. And you'll have the opportunity to kind of see, like, what am I getting stuck on? What are the things that are holding me back from reaching my absolute full potential? What are the things that are going to, oh, I'm sorry, this is not, hold on, I have to type that again because it's not an HTTPS. It'll take you somewhere else if you go back to that link. I'm sorry about that. I forgot to tell. LatchTheGap.com. Okay, the second link will work, not the first one. I don't think I can delete it either. Let's see. Oh, I can. That's nice. Okay. So the second link is the one, or the one I just deleted it, but the link with HTTP, not the one with the S at the end. So if you click that link, and all you have to do when you click it, it's going to just ask for your name and your email. Just put that in. And when you go to the next page, it's actually going to take you straight to my calendar. I hardly ever make my calendar available to people, but I opened up sessions for this training specifically because I knew that at the end there were going to be questions, there were going to be people wondering, there were going to be people feeling afraid of, well, how do I make these decisions, right? I don't want you to get stuck in the gap. I don't want you to do that. And I don't want you to wait until my book gets here for you to figure that out either. Book a call with me, and I want to help you to get past where you are right now and get you to your high level, high value goals that you have set for yourself. All right. All right. Well, if there's no one else who's going to include anything in the chat, I want to say thank you so much for showing up today. Join us tomorrow for day 3. And that's going to be positioning. And this is going to be the moment where you're going to realize, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? And now I know what I need to do, right? So thank you so much for joining us for day 2 for decision, and we'll see you back tomorrow for day 3 position. I hope you all have a wonderful day. It doesn't look like we have anyone else coming in today, but that's okay. I love small, intimate experiences. That is just my thing. So that is all good. I just want to say welcome, welcome. Thank you to everyone who is returning. And thank you to those of you who are just showing up for day 3. This has been a really power-packed presentation each day. And I'm just so excited to share with you all what we have going on today. So today's going to be a little bit shorter. I want to allow for some more time for Q&A at the end. And in the meantime, if you haven't already, shout out your name, your city, your state, and kind of why you got into this work. Let me go ahead and share my screen. My apologies. All right. So you can share, any of that information in the comments, and just why you showed up for this training. We really want to know. And then also on day one, I asked you to provide a word that describes how you're feeling right now about this huge task to normalize breastfeeding. So just one word in the chat. I kind of want to hear, just your thoughts of how you're feeling about all of this. And you said ready, Sharon. I love it. I love it. And I think that that is a really good outlook as well, because, we've been struggling to normalize breastfeeding for some years now. I started this movement in 2014, and I'm really, excited still about normalizing breastfeeding, but there's been some obstacles that have been in our way, that new obstacles that even that are coming up, that are starting to make the task feel really daunting and starting to make the task feel just really exhausting. And I don't know about you, but this training is for the advocates who are passionate to serve, but they're feeling really exhausted, right? They're feeling really down on, what is this really going to look like when we get there? Well, I want to welcome you to this training, to day 3. And just some of the things that you want to expect from me is that this is not your average webinar. And for those of you who've been here for the last couple of days, feel free to let them know in the comments what you've been experiencing, how you've been showing up for yourself. But this is really a space where you can shift, right? Pivot and focus and gain clarity so you can start moving forward with authenticity. And so it's really going to be more off trend. I'm going to share some truth bombs, some personal stories, and even a bonus framework at the end. And really, the overall goal of this training series has been to help you to see your full potential. Because once you can see your full potential, so can your future customers and the women that you're serving, the families that really need your support. That's all going to be available to you, because it's going to be showing and shining through you. So that's where we want to get you, okay? But before we get started, I want you to know that I'm going to challenge some of the commonly held beliefs about advocacy. I'm going to focus on you while telling my own story. So just try to quiet the noise, not just the external noise, but the internal noise. Sometimes we can watch a presentation and we think, oh, I'm just going to sit here on the Zoom because I said I was going to be there, but I'm actually doing like these 10 other things, right? I want this time to be about you. I want you to show up for you today. I want you to just put everything down and focus on you today, because you deserve this space for the work that you're doing in this community. I'm going to get a little bit silly. I always do, but that's okay. And I'm going to make another announcement at the end, and I'm going to make an offer for you to continue working with me at no charge, which is really amazing. So I want you to stay to the end if you can, so that way you can get all of those details. All right. So like I was saying, a lot of us advocates who are advocating to normalize breastfeeding, a lot of us feel like this, right? We feel anxious about social media. We feel stuck in the nonstop cycle of, taking care of family and focusing on community and never having time for self, right? We feel undervalued at home because, people just see us for the role that we play versus the person who's filled with passion and desire to serve and change the world. We feel unfulfilled in our work because as we're doing this work, we don't realize that the more that we don't focus on ourselves, the more we're going to be unfulfilled, right? No one tells us that when you're going into any type of position or job that you really need to be focused all in on yourself so that you can grow and change, right? On day one, we talked about Jim Rohn, who said that you can work on your job and earn a living, but you can work on yourself and make a fortune, right? It says that income does not, it seldom exceeds personal development, right? And so we have to work on ourselves as these advocates because what we really want is to be relaxed. We want to feel powerful and fulfilled in our vision and the journey. We want to feel courageous to take on the next thing, even if it scares the living wits out of us, right? And we want to feel excited about this work. We don't want to feel overwhelmed, right? We want to get to a place of overflow. So that way that we're flowing into all of the spaces that we're creating for other people and other families to feel supported. So you might have, a gift or a talent or an idea, right? But you have no time or no, you can't even imagine how you're going to even make it happen, right? You're still trying to figure everything out. Well, we've been taught, right? We've been taught as parents and advocates and even professionals to prioritize everyone else, right? We've been taught that we need to prioritize our work rather than focusing on ourselves. And we've been taught that when we prioritize tasks that keep us busy, we're actually accomplishing something. But that's not true. You can be busy and not be effective, right? So we want to be effective. Put effective in the chat if you want to be a powerhouse advocate that is effective in their work. And then we also sometimes we prioritize media that brings us down, right? I know all of us have seen that story that's going around where an unfortunate situation with a C-section, a baby was harmed and killed in a C-section. I'm not going to say the actual words because I don't want to put that energy into this space. But that type of media brings us down. And the problem is those are the very people we're trying to serve. So because we're focused on all of this negative media, guess what happens? We now start to carry this negativity. Not that we shouldn't show up for them and we shouldn't hold space for them. But because we're inundated with so much negative media around us, it keeps us from being able to show up authentically because we've got all this other stuff on our minds, right? Well, I want to welcome you to day 3 position, right? So day 1 was Envision. If you weren't here on day 1, Envision was all about taking the moment to go internally and look into ourselves for what we really and truly desire from this work that we're doing, right? And coming up with a vision that not only gives us focus and clarity, but it gives us purpose, right? And then day 2, we talked about decision, and we talked about how, listen, those decisions you're making, they're either leading toward your goal or they're not. They're either leading toward your joy or they're not. They're either leading toward your freedom and fulfillment or they're not, right? And so we have to be very conscious of the decisions that we're making so that we can in turn impact our own lives positively, right? And when we do that, when we impact our own lives positively, I like to call this the ripple effect of commitment, where when we commit to our word, it impacts us, but it also trickles down and it ripples out and it affects everyone around us. Okay. So I want to welcome you back to day 3. Today, I'm going to be telling you a quick story. Well, it might not be that quick because this story was pretty heavy for me. I'm telling you a story about my mentor, Les Brown. I talked about this a little bit the first day and the second day, but I'm going to go back and tell you a little bit more. So it was 2019. I was in my living room. I had been waking up every single night from panic attacks. I was losing my mind because I had made the decision without a prior vision. I had made a decision to homeschool our 3 children of all different grade levels. And when I jumped in all the way. I was all the way in and committed for my family. But then I started waking up with these panic attacks because I was like, what about my business? What about my goals? What about my dreams? And then all of a sudden, I started to feel like something was overtaking me and feeling like my dreams were just slipping out of my hands. Okay. And so at that moment, I started to meditate every single morning. I would wake up at 5 in the morning, sometimes even without an alarm clock. I would do this because I just wanted to get still and I needed to be in a space where no one was interrupting me for hours because I needed to be with my own thoughts. I don't know if you've ever felt this way before, but just drop a 1 in the chat if you've ever felt like you just need to get still, right? And so I started to get still, and every morning I would just sit there and I would just close my eyes and I would just focus and I would just say, "What is it?" And I was talking about my purpose. What is it? And I would just keep asking this question over and over and over again. And it's so funny because as I was doing that, I was also looking for ways to stay motivated because I didn't know how to even move forward. And I jumped on YouTube on my phone and I started scrolling and I typed in motivation and all of a sudden popped up this man. And it wasn't even Les Brown's page. It was this man on someone else shared it under a motivational page, right? And I sat there and I listened, and his voice literally spoke to my spirit. I don't know what it was about this man's voice, but when he spoke, it was like I was hearing from the creator himself. I mean, it was speaking into me, right? And I started to feel like maybe, this is something I can do because I love to speak and I had been speaking already, but I actually bombed one of my speaking opportunities at the Austin Wick State Wick conference back in 2019. There's a lot that went into it, but most of all, when I take accountability and I really look in the mirror about what happened, I just didn't practice enough, right? And so when I went on stage, I was also dealing with some family stuff, some personal stuff that had me really emotional. And there's a moment in my presentation where I kind of pull all my emotions together and sometimes I will cry, but not in a way that's not controlled. Well, that day I lost it. I almost didn't recover, but I was able to get back to it and finish my presentation. But some of those reviews, y'all, some of those reviews were very harsh. Some of them were like, "Oh my gosh, she cried on stage." And, people don't know what you're going through when you're going through it, right? But I got to a place where I realized, you know what? It's okay. If I really am supposed to do this, I'm going to do this. And when I heard this man's voice, it changed everything for me. I mean, I believed after hearing him speak that I could speak, right? There's this idea that you can borrow someone else's belief, right? If you don't believe in yourself. And lack of self-belief was what I struggled with the most. A lot of people don't know this about me. You might see confidence, you might see someone who's really excited and passionate, but I struggled for a very, very long time until I hit rock bottom in this moment when I was sitting on my couch and asking, what is my purpose? And listening to this man's voice, that it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I realized I was standing in my own way. I was the one not making the decisions and forming the habits that I needed to be successful on the stage, right? It was no one else but me. It was not my life circumstances, right? It was not all the different things that my husband might ask me to do. It was nothing else. It was me standing in my own way and not prioritizing my gift and my dream, right? And so I decided to stop dreaming, stop chasing that dream. And I decided to start taking action that could bring me results. Okay. And so it's so funny because this was the time that I hit rock bottom, but almost exactly to the date, 1 year later in 2020, I got a ping on my phone that said that Les Brown was live on Facebook. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I got to go watch him live," right? So I'm making breakfast, watching him live. And then all of a sudden, it says, message me if you're interested in working with me. And the year prior, when I was sitting in my living room listening to his voice, like I told myself, I committed to my word and said, if I ever get the opportunity to work with this man, I'm jumping on it. Right. So fast forward to 2020, I get the ping, I jump into the messenger on Facebook. I realize that this is the moment. This is the opportunity that I've been waiting for. Right. And I go ahead and join. He has this course that's teaching people how to speak. It's called the Power Voice Academy. And I was like, this is it. I jump into the course. I start getting all gung ho, taking all the notes and showing up to all of the live sessions. And then I got distracted. Right. I got distracted by this thing over here. I had just finished launching my first online course. So I had finished teaching it right before I got the opportunity to work with him. So the great thing was I had the revenue to be able to invest into myself. But what I didn't have was the focus. Okay. What I didn't have was the purpose. Right. And I was still looking, right? I was still trying to find it. And so what ended up happening was I didn't have any accountability to do what the call to action was for this course, which was submit a 3-minute speaking story of your story, 3 minutes, and we'll let you know if we want to hear more from you. And if we hear more from you, you'll get an opportunity to speak directly on stage, on Zoom in the class to share your story with Les directly. And if he picks you to be one of the 20 out of your group, you get to present your 10-minute speech after you evolved it in the course at his live conference that was streamed across his Facebook and all his other platforms. Over 1 million people were going to see this event. And my goal in the beginning was, yeah, that's what I want to do. I need to get on this stage. This is going to be what positions me, right? This is going to be the thing that helps me to see myself where I need to be, right? But with the lack of accountability, I got distracted. I wasn't focused. And I actually invited someone else to come into the course, and she did. And y'all, within 30 days, she got selected. She got picked. And she was going to be in the presentation on the stage. Now, type guilty in the chat if you've ever been so gung-ho about something and you tell someone else about it, and then you get distracted and they take off further than you. If that's ever happened to you before, just type guilty in the chat, because when that happened to me, I looked back and was like, where does she come from? At the same time, I used it as motivation. And I asked her if she would be my accountability partner. And I asked her if she would give me tips and listen to me speak and let me know what she thought I was missing so that I would be ready to present my speech to them. And she did. She helped me. And the following week, I told her, I'm just going to submit it. I'm going to ask them if I can get up on the stage. I'm ready to do this. I'd been practicing every day, y'all. I was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like, if 5 o'clock can't cut it, 4 o'clock is going to give me that extra hour of studying that I need, that extra hour of practice, the refinement, all of those things that I needed to win this challenge. So I went in that day. All of my stuff was acting up just like today. Video was off. Everything was off. Nothing was working. And I stopped, took a deep breath. I was just like, this is supposed to happen today. This is supposed to happen today. And I went ahead and got on stage when they called me, and I just ran through it like as if I had practiced every day of my life for this one moment. And you know what was interesting? When he heard me that day, I thought, I talk a little bit about my postpartum experience, and I talk about breastfeeding in my story. I thought he was going to think like, okay, that's fine. We picked her, but we're just going to keep moving on. No, he was so intrigued by my story that I had an opportunity to speak to him one-on-one for 5 whole minutes in front of the entire class. For me, that was life-changing. It was a moment where I was like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be right here and right now, right? And so he selected me. And in June of that year, I got to not only speak and present, but because of the impact that my story had on the group, all of the other participants voted to have me close the summit. And that's the last summit they've done, which means I closed out the entire program. Okay. That was more than I could ever have imagined, right? Coming from San Diego, just being a wife and a mom who dealt with postpartum and struggled with breastfeeding and couldn't figure out some of these things. I ended up becoming a photographer who traveled around the world with her baby on her back, taking pictures of mom's breastfeeding. And when I got to the point of producing that tour, I knew there had to be more, because the money that I was making was just covering the cost of the tour. I didn't get paid to tour for 2 years. I didn't get paid. All that money that cycled in went right back into the tour. Okay. But I knew that it had to be done because my mission for normalizing breastfeeding at that moment was to document diversity. And I knew that San Diego was not going to give us diversity in a lot of ways, but mostly in the weather, right? We always have great weather. You can see it in this picture, right? So I said, I got to get on the road. But then I started presenting, I started speaking, and y'all, eventually I was like, I have to write this book. And then from there, I started coaching, right? And so the transformation that you are seeing in my life, it had to do with my positioning. Powerful step number 3 in this 3-step strategy is position. And when we think about position, you have to understand your position is going to help you test the vision that you have in your mind. Okay. Your position is going to ignite or reignite the passion to serve your community with everything in you. Okay. If you've been feeling like your flame is burnt out, if you've been feeling like, I'm a little bit overwhelmed with this, like, let's avoid this and do something else, it will reignite you if you are positioned correctly. And then your position will also help you to stay focused on your vision, right? When you're positioned correctly. And so I looked up some of the definitions, and I had to pull this one out because it just made so much sense. Okay. Position, referring to positions or positioned or positioning, we're going to talk about the verb tense and not the noun. Okay. So the verb tense, I love this because it talks about you physically positioning yourself. Now, yesterday we talked about it's not just external, it's also internal, right? So your internal positioning matters too. And I'm going to show you how by these definitions. So for example, your external would be to put, to place, to locate, to situate, to set, to site, to stand, station, lay, lie, rest. Wow, that's interesting. Let's keep going. To prop, to plant, to stick, install, to settle. Wow. Usually when we think about the word positioning, we're thinking about actually going out and physically doing something, right? I'm positioning myself. But did you ever think about the fact that maybe your positioning needs to be laying down and getting some rest? Maybe your positioning needs to be installing more belief in yourself, right? Maybe your positioning means to settle for what you have right now and work at your gift with everything that you have until you have more, right? It can mean to slow down, like rest, or it can mean to take off and launch, like deploy. Okay. So positioning is everything. And in the right seasons of life, if you're positioned correctly, it's going to show up on the external. Okay. So just a quick truth bomb. Positioning yourself according to your vision will attract your ideal customers. Okay. It will help people to acknowledge and remember your brand in other places. Now, let me go back a few moments. You are the brand. I don't know if anyone knows who Miss Right's Way is, but back in like I want to say 2016 or something like that, we got on a Zoom call because she was also dealing with some of these feelings of overwhelm and not knowing really how to position herself. And the words that I spoke to her were, "You are the brand." Right? We hear about personal brands all the time, but if you really start to think about that concept, that's why working on yourself makes you more valuable in the marketplace. It doesn't have anything to do with what knowledge you gain. It has to do with the fact that you're willing to do the work, right? And that shows up on the outside by it attracting the people to you that really want to work with you, right? And so I'll read you some of these statistics that I found because I was actually really moved. 88% of customers say that authenticity is the key factor when deciding on brands that they like and support. They also say that using a signature color can increase your brand recognition, and that it takes about 50 milliseconds or zero point zero 0.05 seconds for people to form an opinion about you on your website. Isn't that crazy? Like, your positioning could be misdirecting people if it's not positioned properly, right? And then another one is 74% say that transparent communication has become more important after the pandemic, right? And so these are some truths that we need to know and we need to hear so that we can start showing up the way that the people who we truly and deeply desire to serve can see us clearly, right? Because if we're misdirected in our positioning, they're not going to see us clearly, okay? Remember last time I shared a little bit of another presentation that I had made talking about being stuck in the gap. See, what happens is when time goes on and you're stuck in that worry, in that cycle of overwhelm and feeling insecure, feeling like you're not taking any steps forward, feeling like you're ready to just completely give up and just do something that's way easier. To speak to that really quickly, I will tell you, I did this in 2018. I decided that I didn't want to sit around waiting for people to hire me and that I was going to go out and drive Lyft. And so I started driving Lyft on the side of doing these different photography opportunities. And when I was driving Lyft, I had the opportunity to speak to so many people, but I needed to course correct. I was not on the right path and I was not making the right choices for the position that I could see myself in my vision. And so I needed to make some changes. But what happens is the more that you stay in this cycle, you start to really feel like you just want to quit. Okay. And so we want to see you getting not only in alignment with your vision, but seeing that position really have a purpose in your life, right? And using the purpose of your life to stay in position, right? And help you stay focused on your vision. Because even though I had done all these amazing things as a mom and a photographer, the transformation that happened in my life between then and now is like night and day. And you don't know me personally, probably, so you don't know that, but I can tell you that I was always overwhelmed. I was always stressed out. My family was always stressed out with me. And that was the part that was driving me crazy. I didn't like seeing that roller coaster of overwhelm, not just happening to me, but rippling out to the rest of the family. That was the part that really started to make me feel like what I was doing was not the way to go, right? And so this transformation is what you're looking for, right? To feel relaxed, to feel confident, to feel like you have the opportunity to really make something happen in your life and make a huge impact in the world. That's what it's going to take, is effective positioning. You've got to get in alignment with your life's assignment. Stop waiting for everything else to get in a row, right? People always say, I'm lining up my ducks in a row. I'm crossing all my T's, dotting all my I's. No, you have to do it. You have to decide. You have to see it and decide that that's what you really and truly want. And then you physically have to do the thing. You have to position yourself so that you can get the results that you're looking for. Okay. I mean, what is required for me to get from where I want to be to from where I am to where I want to be? Sorry for the typo. What is required, right? Well, we know now, right? Envision, decision, position. And that's going to help us to stay in alignment with where we want to be, with the goal, with the result, with the outcome that we are looking for. Okay. You know, there's this awesome quote. It's by Israel Moore Ayivor. I think that's how you say his last name. I hope I didn't butcher it. But he said, there are many good seeds in you. Therefore, you must avoid every bad soil in the world. The basic approach of positioning is not to create something new and different, but to manipulate what's already up there in the mind and retie the connections that already exist, right? I don't know if you were here yesterday, but yesterday we talked about how decisions are made in the prefrontal cortex and also in the hippocampus. And we talked about how these two pieces of the brain communicate with one another. And as I was speaking yesterday, I came to a kind of a revelation, a realization or something like that, that it's actually showing you the internal and external factors, right? First, your brain is impacted by your senses, your five senses. Then your prefrontal cortex starts to decipher what's the information that they're getting. And then it talks to the hippocampus and they decide that this is the initial information that you have about whatever stimulus you receive. But then there's another step. See, the hippocampus comes back with secondary information from other parts of your brain, other memories, experiences, right? Feelings going on the inside. And it provides that as secondary information to the prefrontal cortex. And then at the end, the prefrontal cortex makes the final decision. Now, that means that you are not only using external things to make your decisions, but it's the internal that is also speaking to you. Therefore, we have to position our internal correctly if we want that positioning to line up the way that it needs to, right? We can be excited, we can be amped up and doing all the things, but if our energy within is not calm and steady, if it's all over the place and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to get it done, it's not helping anyone. It's not helping you. And that's my goal today, is to help you to see your full potential, right? How will your position impact you and how will it impact your view of you? Your view of you and others' view of you, right? If you're positioned all over the place, the vision that they have of you is probably going to be so. Like it said, you got 0.05 seconds to make someone believe that they need to hear your message, right? So write it down. I want you to write down some of the answers to some of these questions. You can pop them in the chat or you can write them down on a piece of paper. And then every day I've also used some scriptures to talk about what the scriptures say about these different ideas. And so when it comes to positioning, it's really about aligning ourselves with scripture and with the words, because when we talked about the Messiah telling us that the kingdom was within us yesterday, if that's the case, then we need to be in alignment with the word, right? And the word is going to show us where we need to go. Now, not everyone follows that path and not everyone believes in that way, but that doesn't mean you can't find your purpose, right? For everyone, there's a different path. And so I love the fact that I can look at my position and clearly see that it's not in alignment with my vision. I love that. I love that I can go back to my decisions and I can check them off and say, yep, that's an alignment. Yep, that's an alignment. I don't know where this came from, but here we go, right? I have something to kind of step back and say, this is going to help me, right? because I want you to imagine what it would feel like to finally be able to make decisions in alignment with your biggest life goals. And in alignment just means in position, okay? In position with the goals that you're setting for yourself. Imagine what that would feel like. Yesterday, we had a moment of deep breathing, and we're going to do this again today because I don't know who's here that didn't try it yesterday, but I want to make sure everyone gets the most value out of this training. I'm going to ask everyone to close your eyes, and we're going to take 3 cleansing deep breaths in and out. Ready? Begin. And out. Again, expand your belly and inhale. And exhale. And one more. Really stretch it out. Go ahead and keep your eyes closed here for a moment. For those of you who were here yesterday, I know we had you begin to imagine the vision that you have for yourself. For those of you who did not, go ahead and begin this process as I'm speaking to you. I want you to pull the vision of your mind onto this into the screen of your mind, rather. And I want you to begin to think about what it would look like for you to deeply serve your community, but also feel deeply served and fulfilled. Think about what that could possibly look like. Don't get caught up in, is it right? Is it good? Should I do it? Just want you to imagine, just want you to play in your mind right now and imagine what that could look like. And as the vision begins to become clear, I want you to write it down. You can pop the information in the chat. You can write it down on a piece of paper, either way. And as we're here in this space together, I want you to remember that as you continue to meditate on your vision, your positioning is going to become more clear. The decisions are going to become easier. Everything is going to start to flow. Go ahead and open your eyes. See, as you start to flow, you start to see that you're actually in focus now. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but you can't focus without flow, and you can't flow without focus, right? Because this is what we really want, right? We want to be able to have aligned goals that help us to increase our value and income, right? We want to be able to say, wow, when I started out, I was so joyful, excited, and then I found my purpose and I started working in it. And then I started to feel so worthy of this calling. And then I started to believe in myself. And after everything, I developed this amazing confidence, not just in me, but in the vision itself, right? In the decision making, in the positioning, right? That's what you really want. So our takeaway for today is that your position is the key to unlock the door of your desires, right? It's the key. Yesterday, we talked about the decisions being the door, but the key to unlock that door is your position, okay? So today we're going to talk about the bonus focus framework. And we've been sharing different frameworks all week. First, we started out with the Latch framework, which was learn, apply, teach, coach, and help others do the same. Okay. And then yesterday's was the asset framework. And that was always stay. Stay was like in parentheses, right? So it was always stay surrendered, studied, equipped, and trained, right? So today for our focus framework, for our bonus framework, the framework is focus. The F stands for Free your fearless energy. The O stands for open your interests more deeply, right? Open up to studying your interests more deeply. The C is candidly approach your purpose and write your vision, right? And then the last one is, sorry, the U is unlock your hidden treasure, right? And so for this one, I have a little in the parentheses, something that I teach in my online course is the gift framework. And that is just your greater intuitive field of thought. It's the thing that you can do with your eyes closed. It's a thing that you can do that can help you to be more effective in your work, right? So unlock your hidden treasure. You've got to do that to focus, right? And the S is just show up authentically and speak your story. Listen, I don't know how many times people have told me that my story can change everything. And I didn't really believe it completely when I was told that, but I borrowed their belief in me, right? And then I started to see that, wow, my story's connected and intertwined into every single thing that I do. And sharing my story can definitely benefit someone else if I have the confidence to share it and to step out and be authentic. All right, so that is it for day 3, but don't leave yet because we've got our announcements. If you weren't here for the last 2 days, our big announcement was that we are launching the Normalized Breastfeeding Network. We're going to be offering collaborations. We're going to be doing promos. We're going to be running ads, and we're setting up a directory on our website. So we want you to apply, and I'll go ahead and I'll put the, oops, sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat. Or sorry, if you want to apply, you actually need to send me an email. That's actually the proper process. I don't think we have a link. Hold on, let me stop sharing really quickly and see if I have a link for you for this. Because what I think, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Hold on. Oh, we do have a link. But what I would like you to do actually is email me because we have to send you some information before you actually apply. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again. Ooh, which screen am I on? Let's go here and full screen. Okay. So I want to announce that our first applicant that's been approved by our board is Utterly, the breast milk marketplace. They help mothers find each other that need to receive or give donor breast milk. And they can also sell their milk on the app. It's actually a really cool idea. And just in case you're wondering, because I know this is always an issue in the lactation field, everyone's wondering, well, oh my gosh, ads, what about who code? We've already thought about all of that. We're going to even be doing a webinar called Milk Marketing Matters very soon. So make sure to stay close to our email updates for that. But we have created an idea that will allow us to create a peer support scholarship fund, which means that all of the advertising that's being done, it's a twofold, two-pronged really type of beneficial system where the lactation businesses that are looking for more customers and clients can advertise through our network and on our social media platforms. And that is actually going to enable them to reach their ideal client. Whereas the money that's going to be used for the advertising is going directly to this scholarship fund. And the thing about it is we believe at Normalized Breastfeeding that education piece needs to be put back into the community because the issues that we're seeing with breastfeeding right now are not issues of whether or not they can afford someone to come and look at their baby's latch. It's just the utter lack of knowledge, right? Lack of understanding and lack of wisdom to make the right decisions, right? And in the book, Latch the Gap, I talk about how you can install these 3 powerful strategies into them so that they can actually use them to help them to achieve the birth that they want and achieve the feeding goals that they desire. Right. So we are so excited about this. We want you to apply. If you're interested, all you have to do is send me an email. You can reply to the email that I sent you earlier today. Just that email actually has a specific thing that says to put NBF network info into your subject line. So you can refer to the previous email from today. Okay. The next thing is I am offering signed copies. Oops, this is supposed to say day 3. Sorry about that. I'm offering signed copies of my book. They're now available for pre-order. I'll put the link in the chat. And if you'd like to, you can go ahead and place your order. I want to send this to everyone. Why are you acting weird? There we go. Okay. So you can get your very own copy, signed copy, soon as they are going to print. Okay. All right. And for day 3, I just want to congratulate our giveaway winners, Ruth Knopf. I'm hoping that I said that right. And Adrian Reddick. Both of you were giveaway winners. We named you in the email that we sent out earlier today. All you have to do is respond to that email and we'll get you taken care of. Okay. So I want to show you this really quickly because the next thing that we're offering is a one-on-one call with me. Okay. It's a free complimentary call. And I don't have a lot of space in my calendar, but I've blocked off certain dates specifically for people who came to this training. Like I blocked off one day for every person who came if they want to book a call with me. Okay. But what I'm going to do is, let me show you this one first. I'm going to actually give you a 60-minute one-on-one with me so that you can start to look at your vision. And I'm going to help you to assess your vision and see if it's actually a purposeful vision, because that's what required to help you to get in alignment with your life's assignment. Okay. And so in that call, we'll talk about some of the different things that are required, but I want you to see for yourself. This is my 4-step process, and I actually have a whole training that you get access to when you apply to book the call and apply to do this call with me. You actually get access to an additional bonus training, a bonus masterclass. And so when you do that, I'm going to talk to you about this purpose pathway roadmap, right? And how your awareness, your discovery, your accountability, and your mastery of your purpose is going to position you exactly where you need to be. Okay. And so I want to invite you to go ahead and book that call with me. I'm going to drop this link in the chat, and I would love to speak with all of you if you are available to speak with me or desire to. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. There's the other one. Okay, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There goes my alarm. All right. And so, is there anyone who has any questions, or you feel like you just want to come on camera and tell me if you enjoyed the presentation, the training? I'd love to hear from you. Let's see. I'm gonna look in the comments really quickly. Oh, the Facebook page. Yes, we do have a Facebook page as well. It's a brand new group, so there's no one in it. So if you decide to join, I'd love to have you in there. But it was really to try and help you feel supported for this training in case you had questions and such in before you actually got into the group or into the training. groups. The name of the group is called Latch the Gap Leaders. Hopefully I did that right. If it didn't, it doesn't work, let me know. Okay. Any questions? No? It's okay if you don't. Oh, Adrian's back. Hey, Adrian. Hey, Sandra. Hey, Sharon. Okay, so I appreciate that, Sandra. I really appreciate it. She sent me a direct message. She had to leave. You're so welcome, Adrian. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate everyone who has had the opportunity to sign up, to show up. I know that it's not the ideal time for everyone, but I just had to make it work for me. That's what happens when you get in position. You know, you got to start looking at life differently and start looking at the things that are going to help you to really do what you need to do. So I appreciate you for showing up. I do have something for you, so definitely contact me about that in regards to the giveaway, because you were one of our giveaway winners. Anyone else? Any comments, questions, concerns? If not, I'm going to let you ladies go, and I will be writing to you very, very soon. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.